Hey there, I'm David Lesmes, and you are listening to a podcast that showcases the powerful stories of extraordinary Latinos impacting the world and leaving their mark on the global stage. It's a pleasure for me to welcome you to Uprise Latino.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Silvia. How are you?
All good, thank you.
Nice. It's really good to have you here. I've told you this before, but every time that I talk with you, I feel that I'm talking with like a superstar that I met because she was doing a course, and I took a course that she was the professor. So I will do a small introduction of you from what I know. Then you feel free to compliment, and after that, we just get into the topic. So I met Silvia through a Latin American startup called Platzi when I was doing some courses on AI ethics, so artificial intelligence ethics, and she has an amazing course on Platzi. She has like 6 courses on Platzi, and that this amazing and beautiful platform of education in Latin America. And from there, I empathize a lot both with her way of expressing, but also with what she was saying and the importance of that field. But then I had the chance of meeting Silvia in person here in Stockholm, out of nowhere. I invite her to one conference, but we didn't manage to meet. But then we met in Stockholm because she was here. She texted me, and we had a coffee, and it's one of the highlights of my year for sure. So yeah, you work in data, you work with AI, but who is Silvia? Tell me what I'm missing.
Wow, that's a complicated question to start with. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very excited to be here and to contribute to the promotion of Latin America outside of it. Sylvia was born in Spain. I'm an econometrist. After that, I did a master's in data science, so I'm a data scientist. I created my own company in Mexico, which is a consultancy in data, and also like I promote education that has to do with data, and as you were mentioning, also about ethics in data, because it's not only about growing, but it's about growing in a sustainable way and in an ethic way. I guess that's me. Also, I think a topic that I'm very concerned about is to reduce the gap in gender when we talk about the STEM sector. And these are the main topics that I try to give some part of me to that.
Okay, that's interesting, but that's your professional field. What else happened with Silvia? What happens when you are not working in your own company or during classes? Who is the other Silvia?
The other Sylvia is passionate about cycling, also about playing piano, traveling, and a big fan of Latin America, to be honest.
That's really nice. And that's curious. So you were born in Spain, but now you are living in Mexico. Your company is Mexican company, I imagine.
Mhm.
So why you decided to move to Mexico?
I was born in Spain. I lived there for the first 17 years. After that, I was living for a while in China. After that, I moved to Brazil. And once I entered Brazil, I never left Latin America again. I started to travel there. I was in Colombia, Bolivia, Venezuela, Chile, Salvador, many places there. But once I visited Mexico, I had this weird feeling that I had never felt before. Like I had traveled a lot, but I never felt like you belong here. It was a very weird feeling, but it was like you should be living here. So I came back to Barcelona. I was there for two more years because I had a job and I had to arrange this change. But I started to actively look for a job in Mexico. It sorted out. So I decided to move. That was more than 7 years ago.
7 years ago, and in that first or like that first trip that you did to Mexico, what like I know that there was a feeling of belonging, but what was the thing that captured you? Like it was the people, the culture, the food.
It was mainly the music. But
Oh.
yeah, I really connected with the Mexican music, like all the types, huapango, mariachi, banda, norteño. I really connected with the way to transfer the feelings and the way in which people could express the way in which they were feeling, like even like any kind of sentiments they even cried in. And it wasn't only about young people, like everyone would share music and sing it together. I found it impressive. So it was a great way for me to connect with the people. Of course, the language was helpful. I could speak Spanish, of course, so that really helped. And I also loved the way in which people were facing life. I I started to see how problems there were more relevant, but were taken less seriously. So people were like survivors. They were always happy, they were optimistic, and they knew how to make things happen. I felt in love with that feeling.
And when you arrived to Mexico, were you traveling alone?
Yeah, I was first traveling alone, then with some friends who were living there, but mainly alone. Yeah.
Okay, and how is to arrive? Like, well, it was already 7 years ago, but how is the experience of arriving alone to a country in Latin America? That needs to be really interesting.
They told me it was dangerous. I know it's dangerous, but you start to get this feeling of what to do and what not to do. And I think it's a great way like to become more observative and to understand it from a different perception. I think it's easier for a European person to go to Latin America than vice versa. I always felt very welcome. I felt that people wanted to meet me. They made it very easy, to be honest, like to get to have friends. They invited me to plans, which I think it's not so easy when it's the other way around. So that was really like nice and charming, and it also helped me like to decide to go there because I always knew I wouldn't be alone.
Definitely. No, and I can relate. So for the ones that don't know, I'm living currently in Stockholm, in Sweden, one of the countries that is really recognized for the warmth of their people. And, and like that, those first interactions are really easy here. So yeah, I can relate. But I want to dig more on that specific time in your life when you were arriving. What do you remember about those first days in Mexico? Like, who was the first person that you connected with? What was like that those first days that capture you in Latin America?
My first week was really atypical. I arrived in Mexico in September 2017. And for those who don't know, that was after the 1985, the biggest earthquake in Mexico and mainly in all Latin America and in the world. So yeah, many places were destroyed. Like it was a huge disaster. Many people died, and yeah, it was my first week in there. I didn't even know there were earthquakes in Mexico. Yeah, at least in Mexico City, I knew about the coast, but I never expected that. And as it is not so common as in Chile or other regions that buildings are more prepared, that's why it was such a disaster. And so it was pretty atypical, but by the time that I saw the damages and the way that people were reacted, I even felt more connected to the country. I could see how people were cooperating. Everyone would offer what they had in their hands, like yeah, the richest ones would give pizzas to the people who were contributing to the event and helping them, and the poorer ones were even giving blankets and water and what they could. So it wasn't like, of course, like a very nice moment to be in there, but somehow I felt it was the right moment for me to be in there. I'm also a paramedic from the Red Cross, so I could help in a medical perspective also to the event. So by that, I started to meet people, and it took a while till I could join the job because, of course, like as the damage was so big, it took me like one more than a month to be able to join Uber. This was the company that I was joining when I arrived to Mexico. So it was pretty chaotic. I couldn't even find a place to rent because everything was and the review. But yeah, the atypical but still challenging and still like very connecting in a different sense.
Okay, and okay, so you arrived the first week, of course, really difficult environment. And then you went back to Barcelona, came back 2 years later. In which moment you say,
No, no, no,
okay,
no. That was by the time
oh,
that I was definitely settling down. So I took
okay.
all my things, even my cat, and then the city was destroyed. So my
Oh
parents, my
no.
family expected me to go back to Spain after
Oh no, no, no,
seeing
no.
how hard it was to live in Mexico. But I decided to keep with my plan and stay there. The initial plan was to be there for 1 or 2 years, but then the Mexican passion starts, and it's been 7 years. And I
Okay.
even hold a Mexican passport.
So yeah, you are the great exemplification of a dual citizen.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
you said your family expected you to come back to Spain. So
Yeah.
how was that conversation? Like what
Tough.
were, yeah, what were they saying?
I was 24 when I came to Mexico. They expected it to be an adventure and something I hadn't really thought about it. So they expected me like to be just for 1 or 2 years and then to go back. But we really had this discussion. They complained a lot. And after seeing that 1 week after my trip, like there was this huge earthquake, they thought, see, she's going to be back. She's going to be afraid and she's going to say that was a crazy dream. I'm going back. But by the time I said like I would continue in Mexico, they were desperate. They said, I'm gonna pay for your ticket and you choose if you go back or you go. But that never happened. I kept being there.
Okay, okay, I see. And okay, so you were working at Uber. That was your first job there, right?
Exactly.
So that, okay, in Uber during that time, it was growing a lot, I imagine. What were you doing
Absolutely.
at Uber? What was your role?
I was a data scientist in Uber, and yeah, as you were saying, it had only been there for 2 years. It was growing a lot. Mexico, it's next to the US, so it was the second biggest place where to be in Uber America in general. Then it started to grow some in other countries in Latin America, but by that time it was the only one playing this role as a ride-hailing company. And after a 1 year, I switched to Didi, also to lead the data team. And this is a Chinese-owned company. It doesn't have any presence in Europe, but it's the main worldwide speaking for ride-hailing. And there it was a different challenge because it was launching it, like creating the first competitor for Uber within Latin America at that moment.
Oh, you betray them. You betray Uber.
Somehow.
Okay.
I gave them more reasons to have some challenge and play.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, from challenge we learn, and I hope that they learn also from that. Okay, but enough about work. I told you, and I want to sustain this. And for all the other people that are interested in Silvia, she has amazing courses. If you want to know more about her professional journey, there is already information online about that. But I want to focus on other things in this conversation, and is uh, of course, as a foreigner arriving to a new place, creating a community is maybe in Latin America we are more warm and yeah welcoming, but it's never easy to create a community of people that you can relate to, create some friends, people that you can hang out or support you. So do you feel that it was difficult, or how was your journey on finding that specific community?
It's difficult to explain this part. Like, it was being very easy to meet people and for them to let me join their groups, which was pretty weird to see that I was so accepted, to say it somehow. But on the other side, it was difficult like to see where did I really connect, or which was the true group, to say it in a way, because Spain is more equal. So somehow it's easy, like, once you have your group, people are pretty similar. But Latin America in general, in particularly in Mexico, that it's what I know the most, people are more stratified. There is a bigger contrast, and there's some way in which they know where do they belong, but you do not know as a foreigner, and first you don't realize there's this difference. So I had a very mix of groups, like they were so different, and I realized that they didn't want to hang out together. And that's where I realized that there was this stratification where they were making these distinctions, but I couldn't realize in the beginning. It's taken me like the first 5 years to see how these interactions would change. And this is the only thing that made me like feel kind of uncomfortable, because I could see like the differences, especially the socioeconomic differences, but how kind of people were born and they already knew where would they belong, and it's so difficult for them to switch within those categories. This is something weird to see, at least in Spain,
Mm.
like in such a marked and defined way.
Yeah, I see. And so, what about now? Like, who is your community now in Mexico?
My community is still very diverse. I have a group of friends who are more into technology, others more into sport. I try to find more the people not so much about the rank or the education and so on, but more about the hobbies, to share some networks, some spaces, some activities. So this has been the way in which I have been able to feel more connected.
And do you have like a group of musicians? Now that you mentioned that you play piano.
I don't play in a band, but yeah, I play piano, and I have other friends who play other instruments, and we can talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. And okay, you say that what captured you was in some sense also the music. What are you listening to now? Like Mexico is a country that right now is exporting music in every single sense. Like they are dominating certain Latin American markets and also the States. So like let's try to expand a bit more on that part of the music. What was about the Mexican music, and what are you listening right now that keeps you entertained and curious about it?
It's very specific. Like my favorite type of Mexican music, it's norteña, which is kind of a nostalgic old Mexican music. Like not many young Mexican people listen to it, but I really connect with this music, especially with these tones of accordion. I even have in mind like to get to learn it. I know it's difficult, but maybe from the piano it has some similarities. So, and it's a very Mexican instrument. So this is my next plan.
Okay, so from CEO to musician to part of a norteño
Combined,
band
combined.
to at the same time. Cool. That's really nice. Mexico, I feel that when people think about Mexico, at least here in Europe and even in Latin America itself, we have a really reduced perception of what Mexico is. Um, both from simple example food, where everywhere in Europe if you find Mexican food is like tacos, but tacos they are delicious, but they are such a small part of like the extent catalog of Mexican food. Same thing with music. I think that like people just relate it to certain things. So what has been like the most interesting things that you have found in Mexico, either in food or in music or in architecture? What are the things that you say like this is so unique?
What Mexico has so many things that are unique. Even the ecosystems. It's crazy how within just one country you can find the forest, the wildness, the desert, the beach, but Paradise Beach. I was very surprised by the landscapes. Also, yeah, it's incredible how many things can you do out of mice. So we only know the tacos, but it's tacos, enchiladas, tetelas, totopo, so many things that you can prepare. But no, what I was most surprised about, it's like this, as you were saying, like this reduced perception of what Mexicans are, what Latinos are, because it's kind of controversial to say that. I don't know how to make it sound not so
Just
radical, but
go for it.
But I was surprised in the way in which the story is told, at least in Spain, about what happened in the last centuries, right? Like the conquerors, the how was that? In Spain, at least, we are told that it's an expedition, and then you realize, of course, it was a violent conquer.
Yeah.
And it's something that when my family, my friends come to Mexico, I always try to make them come to archaeologists and to historical museums to let them know more about how it was. And the thing is that I feel how it still is. I mean, I feel like the battle, the conquer, it's still on, in the sense that there's still like some superiority of feeling between countries. And by the end, the reason why some countries are living better than others, it's mainly because they live out of those countries. And this happens a lot between Latin America and Europe. So Europe is richer, Europe feels superior, but they are superior, of course, because the starting point was different. They conquered and so on, but also because till now this balance hasn't changed. So they still have the materials, the extraction, the mines, everything comes from other countries, but mainly Latin America. So it's very easy to have the taxes and the headquarters in Europe, but to take all the raw materials somewhere else, and even the work, the handwork. So yeah, this was the main point that I wanted like to say in here. And I would like that we had this reflection and not only thinking about the the GDP, I don't know, which is kind of a limited metric, a nonsense metric. We should see the whole picture.
I want to expand on that because I have, and I told you about this when we were talking before about having this podcast, and is that I have a thing in my mind or an idea, and is that, of course, like, or from my perspective, the part of the world or the region of the world that dominates culture has a better chance of developing and having better interactions with other regions. And that happened with the United States in the last century, that they were really, really like the powerhouse of culture, even if we like it or not, like all the references that we have of, for example, cyber future, cyberpunk, everything is like every alien connection that we have, all of them happen in California. I don't know, like they never said like, hey, we want to visit La Paz, Bolivia. Like all the alien stories that we have, they happen in California or in Colorado. But and same thing with Europe in the centuries before that. But something curious that I'm seeing is that Latin American culture is starting to be really interesting and really put in front of other regions, in front of Europe especially. Do you feel the same? Is there a feeling in Mexico similar? And you, as an European, have you perceived during these 7 years a change, at least in the cultural perception of Mexico?
I see that they start to be more curious in the sense that even in the disco, you get to listen a corrido, which is a type of Mexican music, pretty new. So I think we are starting to be more diverse in that sense. But still, like when we think about like the true perception of the Latin American countries, there's still like a big discrimination. I don't think they know like about the potential, about what's going on in there, the culture of the people, the historical, all the things that are going on and that have been going along like for so many years. I think there's still a huge room, and it needs that people travel there for them to realize. I think after a travel, like things change, but of course, not most of the people travel there to have this chance.
For sure, for sure. And I want to focus on that. Like, yeah, not everyone is going to travel to Latin America, but what can be a good point of contact if you are not able to travel, or before you travel, because it's important to have some references. What would be your suggestion as an European living in Latin America?
I think we should
I'm
be.
sorry, as a European Latina, because you already have your passport and you are super Latina living in Latin America. Sorry.
Sure, sure. I already voted in the last elections of Mexico. I'm very proud
Good.
to be officially Latina. So I think we should be more proud about our history, about who we are, promoting the other languages that we have, not only Spanish, like promoting the indigenous part of Latin America. Like maybe we don't need to learn Nahuatl and all the other languages, but we should integrate them more. I traveled this year to Guatemala, and I really like the way in which people were like more connected between them. In Mexico, it's not the case. Like indigenous people are the minority, and they are not so proud. They try to belong and speak Spanish. So I think we should like promote more the roots of the country and speak up on that. Also about, of course, we have the food, we have the music. Those are like very powerful tools. Also the art in general terms, I think it's the best way to approach. And of course, from an economic perspective, like the more companies that we have that are particularly startups are the ones that are now more popular in Latin America, but we should have at least those unicorns, those big companies, at least each country one, so as that each country starts to be like represented somehow in the, at least in the willingness of, I want to work there. So this is a big position, and even more for young people. I think this is a very powerful tool also to grow and to promote the knowledgement of each of the countries.
I love it. I love it because you take it from a personal standpoint of recognition to a like more societal point of recognition of our diversity, our roots, our language, and then you also take it to something really evident and tangible. Is the economic side and the economic potential that we have in Latam. Um, now let's turn it to the other side. There is a lot of people traveling to Latin America. I don't know if you saw that, but there was an Spanish guy on TikTok that he posted a TikTok saying like, "Hey, why everyone is traveling to Colombia?" And like the minister of of commerce of Colombia invited him to the country, and he was traveling all around. It was crazy. I will send you the TikTok. Like he was invited by the minister, like he met like half of the people in the government. Crazy, but he had a point, and is that right now there is a lot of interest, both in terms of business and but also in terms of culture and traveling towards Latin America. What could be a good advice for the people that are traveling towards Latin America? What would you like to let them know?
If they are European, I would ask them to be more observative, to get to see how people feel, their faces, the passion in things, the way in which they interact, the way in which they dance. I would ask them to stay humble and to not to speak so much, but to listen more than what they speak.
Okay, that's a good advice. Do you have any example in your own Latin American experience when you felt that, like this story of this person, or like this was a trip that I really understood, or I saw something different that really changed your perspective?
I think Bolivia was a great experience for me, like to get to travel by buses, to see how many times like the roads were complicated, we need to switch the bus, and to see how people were patient and they just accepted it. I crossed all Peru with the Pan American road, and I was the only one who was desperate. I said, like, you're the wrong one. They are right. You just need to chill. And then I saw like how people would adapt to those situations. And there were always those merchants to get to see that, okay, there was a collapse in this part of the road. Let's sell cheese, let's sell food, let's sell blankets. And so there was a full commerce there. Like I was so surprised on how quick people could adapt and they would have like a reason to stay well and to keep with a good mood. They say, okay, that's something we definitely need to learn.
Okay, okay, very nice. And what in that trip to like, I feel that is my personal perception, and I'm talking probably from ignorance, but I think that countries like Bolivia, like Guatemala, Mexico, also they have a better connection with their past than some other countries in Latin America. They have a better understanding of what happened in the past. Do you do you feel also that there is a big difference because Latin America is a huge region? Do you feel that culturally there is certain differences in the way that we perceive ourselves from all the trips that you've done?
I think that's true, that they are very aware of what happened, what's the history, and not all the countries have the same knowledge. But still, what I see in common is that they are they are proud of being Latinos, but they are not that proud when we talk about the perception. For example, a very easy example is about the brands. Like they would always see like European brand being of a higher quality than a Mexican brand. Why? Why? So and many stores you are gonna see the European, the Parisian, of course they are not from Paris, but they just put this name because it reminds of high quality. I think we should be promoting more what we have, what we produce, to be more, yeah, contributing to each other, to build more community. Because we have very clear what culturally means to be Latino, but we don't really help each other in an economic sense, from a deep perception. It's always going to be and when we see like this European person, we treat this person better. I felt many times that when I was speaking in Mexico, like people would take my opinion more seriously than some other opinion, and that's very uncomfortable too, because it's like we are the same, you know. And this is of course something that it's never going to happen in Spain with a Mexican. They are not going to, either they listen to this person equally or they listen to that person less, but never it's going to have this superior because of the region where they belong.
Mm. And yeah, like that self perception is super important because if we just have in our own minds that, yeah, that Latin America's products or like our food or our culture is not as sophisticated, is weird because at the end of the day the paradigm of sophistication or of like high quality or whatever was not done by us. So we can also create our own perception and we can say like, hey, this is what good means for us, this is what quality means for us.
Absolutely.
Mm. This okay, let me come back to you because I feel that we went all over the concept and the trip and everything, but I want to come back to your journey. um when you finally like already established yourself in Mexico, how was your experience on like your day to day, like how your life was different from being in Spain, like in your day to day, what made you feel like attracted in the day to day towards Mexico? Because of course there is the big angles of like music and culture and things and blah blah, but in your day to day, what was different?
Many things were different. I had to change, of course, the food and like the things of the day a day. But it was mainly to get to understand how people work, because we are really different. We are really, really different. Even though that we have a common culture and a common language, it was difficult for me to interact, to be in the shop, for them to understand my point, not to be so direct, not to offend anyone, not like the way in which we express each other, it was very different. Also working wise, like the way in which you need to be in the meetings also changes. I had to learn so many words, like to change the way in which I was addressing to people. It was deep changes, deep changes, especially in language.
Okay, okay, I see. And but I want to get more down to the things that you enjoyed. So like of course there was a lot of changes, but in your day to day, because as a Latino, something that I miss a lot is precisely those small things of like here in Stockholm, if I want to go to a store, I need to walk like 25 minutes. Like, and they sell three things, like nothing. In Latin America, there is this diversity of food, this diversity of things. So like when I was living back in Latin America, I had my place to buy fruits, and I used to talk a lot with the baker of my neighborhood. So like in your day to day, what was good? What you felt that it was interesting and that helped you to stay there?
I really loved how charming people are in my street. I always go by bike. I'm very desperate about the traffic in Mexico City. So I'm this person who is always biking along the city. So this made me get to meet all the people who are working within the next 3 blocks, which are like 50 people, because one is helping you to park, the other is helping you with juices, with tortillas, with tacos. There's so many people working in the street that I started to meet them all and to say hello to all of them. And this was really nice. I mean, it took me like 10 minutes to leave my street, like saying hello to each of them. But it's something that I really miss. When I'm 1 month abroad, I always think of them, and the way in which like my paths are taken every morning and every evening when I'm back. I also really like to learn from the food. I never had such a food culture. In Spain, I used to have a coffee with biscuits, and, and now in Mexico, I have this full breakfast with an omelette, juices. I didn't know I could eat that much in the morning, and now it's kind of a protocol. Also like the families in Mexico, I love how they interact, how they welcome you, how lunch with them, it's not 30 minutes lunch but 3 hours lunch. So how much can you extend a lunch? That's very particular. I would say these are mainly the things that I take with me.
Okay, that's really beautiful because I think that learning to belong in a new place takes place in those specific like little details that you fall in love with, like the having a big breakfast or like having a family lunch. And I think that's really beautiful, and I'm glad that you appreciate it. Mm, Now I want to zoom out again, and is Mexico. And I've been reading lately about Mexico and like especially the history after the Mexican Revolution. That is, Mexico became basically the superstar in Latin America in terms of culture, with the explosion of Mexican cinema and muralism and all the thing, music also, that they are always a reference. But if people are interested in Mexico, what are those points that you will reference to? Like, do you have some artist or some I don't know, writers or even people, entrepreneurs that you say like, hey, these people, it's important that you know them?
I would recommend to read Octavio Paz, who is the only Nobel in literature in Mexico. He's really good, and he explains the roots of the country. So I think it's a good approximation to it. Of course, I would always recommend, even though she's already like a big icon of Mexico, Frida Kahlo, because she was not only an artist but a big revolutionary and a big feminist, or the start of the feminism in Latin America. She broke many standards. But I think there's so much art and in so many aspects that I would recommend everyone to see where do they connect. Like there's even like ways in which you can travel and get to see the art in Oaxaca, for example, which is in the south area of Mexico. You can get to see the textiles, how people do their handcraft things, and so there's so much art that you can choose the one that you feel most connected with. Like I always, now I'm not wearing any Mexican clothes, but I really like the textiles that they do.
That's super interesting because yeah, it's really, and also Mexico is a huge country. Like it's really really big and it's really different from region to region. And okay, so yeah, you have I think Octavio Paz, Frida Kahlo, absolutely amazing recommendations. And yeah, they are known, but still the density and like the depth that they have is you can stay and study them for ages. What about a music recommendation? Because you like music was your thing.
Oof, that's too much my thing. I'd say I'd recommend like to start with the norteñas, the music of Los Tigres del Norte, the North Tigers. Because they talk about also the revolution, the story. They talk about like specific moments that they lived within the music, singing and dancing. And most of the times they are sad stories, difficult stories, but they sing in a particular rhythm that you just connect and enjoy. And this is this is their music.
It's
This is
it's
the
really it's really
unique thing
beautiful.
that, yeah,
It's
this
really
is
beautiful
only
to
music can
see.
achieve that.
Exactly, and but for me, it's really beautiful to see like the passion that you talk, uh, or like the passion that you express about this, about Mexico, your home, because I think that's something that uh, sometimes we miss in Latin America, and is also being extremely proud of what we have, and we try to hide it or like. And it happened to me, and that's I think that I shared that with you that at certain point in my life I was hiding my Latinness just to fit in the standard of the place that I was living. But it's so beautiful. Like once another person is telling or saying it to you, it's like yeah, so beautiful. Okay, so we have Octavio Paz, Frida Kahlo, Los Tigres del Norte. Um, let's come back to your field of work, and is Mexico is also in economic terms is giant, is really big, and you are in the space of technology that well Latin America is not super recognized by it, but I think we are doing a good job and we are getting there. Who are some interesting players? What is happening in Mexico that could be interesting for the rest of the world to see and to perceive from a tech perspective?
Startups are growing a lot. Tech sector, particularly in banking startups are growing a lot, are appearing. Uh, but in general, what Europeans don't know is that Mexico is a huge opportunity, and most of the times, depending, it's so diverse and it's so stratified that if you are aiming for a technology role, the salary is going to be way higher in Mexico than in Europe. This is what any European doesn't know, especially in Spain, of course, where salaries are lower than average Europe. But I think it's a great place to find opportunities and to grow your career and yeah, where many unicorns are starting to be. I
That
think
is
that
super interesting.
something particular is that while in Europe we have many restrictions and a constant growth, in Mexico and Latin America, the growth is being exponential.
That is really interesting. I stay a lot with something that you say, and it's to grow your career. Because we usually have the perception that to grow your career, you need to go to the States and to Europe and to Madrid, Berlin. But maybe like it's another perspective that people can have if they want to experience hyper, I don't know if hyper growth, but really fast growth. Go to Mexico, go to Chile, go to Brazil. That's a perspective that I've never heard before, but I imagine that is true. It's really interesting. So you said banking sector or fintech, I imagine. Is there any other that is also growing, that you see like, okay, there's a lot of potential here?
Mobility, that it's the one that I've been mainly focused, but technology, any tech startup is growing way faster in Mexico because there's more population, there's more need, there's more diversity. So you can create things that have a bigger impact too. You can create something. For example, the perception of Uber, it's way different in Europe than in Mexico. For me, in Europe, maybe it would be like one more job. So with the only focus to have more riders and have more drivers. That's it. But in Mexico, in Latin America, has way more advantages, like helping people to truly arrive to their destination, to get to know how much are they going to pay, to connect them better, to provide more certainty. But it's even the main focus is security. So I really think that you are there's always a social profit that you can provide to people instead of only the economic one, that it's the main focus that you're going to do in Europe. So I think the impact is way deeper.
Okay. And if we extrapolate it to an even bigger perspective, what do you see in the future for Latin America? What is coming for us in any sense that you feel it? And you are Latin American, so that's why I ask, what is coming for us? What are those
A
things and
huge
those
growth.
stories?
I really think it's going to be a huge growth. I would like that we start to balance it a bit more and to be as proud as we are, but to show this proudness, like consuming our own products and being like truly supportive to Latins. But I also think that it's growing a lot regarding nearshoring, for example, at least in Mexico. There are big politic battles. For example, the Chinese American one, the US one. So I guess this is also opportunity for Mexico. I don't know if it's a good opportunity, but it's an opportunity because switching the Chinese production to Mexico, it produces me a lot of uncertainty. But we are talking about growth. So growth speaking, it's guaranteed.
And for Silvia, what is coming for Silvia as a when did you get your passport?
It was many years ago. In fact, I did that by the time that I could. So it
Oh,
was during
really?
the pandemic 4 years ago.
So you are Mexican since 4 years ago.
Yeah. But the thing
Okay.
is that in Mexico, elections are every 6 years. That's why these were my very first
Ah,
elections.
okay. I get it. I get it. I get it. Okay, but then what is coming for Silvia? Like, what is next for you, both in a personal, like, of course, in a professional level, but also in a personal level?
Learning accordion. That's gonna happen. I think I'm really gonna do it. I think I also want to learn Nahuatl, which is the main
Okay.
indigenous language in Mexico. And I guess I'm gonna keep supporting to reduce the gender gap in technology, especially in Mexico, like giving speeches in universities. Like any girl that I can encourage to learn science is it's like my, my biggest satisfaction. I think I'm gonna continue with that and continue traveling within Latin America, getting to know more about the region, and getting to have more friends coming and joining the Latin American countries.
Have you had any other friends from Spain that now are living in Latam?
any, any, many friends visiting, but no one yet staying.
Yeah, we're going to convince them. No worries.
We'll manage.
Absolutely. Um, I have two questions more that I would like to ask you. The first one is, I feel that, and it's connected to that last question that I told you, and is there is a lot of interest in Latin America, even from a personal standpoint of a lot of people here in Europe, uh, and you are a person that already experienced the entire journey, and you are already even Latin American since 4 years ago. Um, if you could come back to the moment where you traveled for the first time to Latam, what would you like to tell yourself now that you have all this experience?
I would like to explain the colors of Mexico. Like I would like to say that everything's gonna be all right, that it's different, but we are the same in the end. Colors are also very particular in Mexico. I didn't mention the colors, but it's something that I realized like by the first week that in Spain it's more about orange and gray, and Mexico it's more colorful. And
Colorful,
this
you mean
also
like in general or in
you
clothing or
see
in...
colors everywhere, but there are some particular colors. There's a very famous architect in Mexico, Barragan.
Mm,
This is the name. Who tries to, this was his main objective, by the way, like to get to know to other countries what is Mexico with colors, like the pink, the blue, the yellow, like this combination. And it's a weird combination of colors. And then you realize once you're in Mexico how colorful it is. Even when there is a celebration, but also when a building is new and they want to sell the new apartments, they would flags that are very colorful. And this is a way in which people get to know that this is on sale. So I would see so many colors that these provide some sort of relief, some
okay,
sort of home, some sort of we are all together.
that's
I
beautiful.
I would have liked that to get to know that before.
Okay, nice. That's really beautiful. And yeah, you're right. Like that's something that I was talking with another person that I told you, Antonella, and she was saying that we have the opposite here, especially in Sweden, because Sweden is a really neutral place in terms of outfits and colors. And here, when you use your orange jacket or your red sweater, it's like, oh my god, everyone is looking at me. And we sometimes we fall into that pressure of like, I'm just going to use beige and gray, but like that precisely is also the colors is something that represent us as region.
Mhm.
And
Definitely.
that's a really beautiful point. Um, okay, so that was for you. The last thing is I want to, or like the idea of this space, of course, is to give some light to people that are not Latin American about our region and about how they can interact with our region. That, well, you are a great example of it, but it's also for Latin Americans that are ambitious or that are curious or that know that our region has a lot of potential. So I, from my perspective, you're doing a lot for the region. So if you could give a message to Latin America as a whole, what will be that message
For a Latin American or for a European going
for
there?
Latin Americans
For Latin Americans to embrace our culture.
to embrace our culture? Super important. Super, super important. I'm going to stop here. I'm Colombian, for the ones that don't know. I'm going to just play cumbia until everyone listen to it. But it's true. It's true. That's really nice. Okay, last thing that I let you go after that is if you like if you see any opportunity to, no, I'm phrasing that question super weird. Let me come back to what I was saying. Yeah, so the last question, we're going to cut that, so no worries. But the last question is, what is the message that you have for yourself? What is the message that you have to Silvia right now about this journey that you had since 2017, right? That you arrived to Latin America. What do you want to tell to yourself after all these years?
I'm surprised. I'm very happy. This was absolutely unexpected. I just came as my parents were saying, as an adventure to see what happened. But I realized that I truly belong here. I realized that I really love the region and I wanted to stay and to contribute to create a better space for all of us. So yeah, my message is the duality exists and you just need to make the best out of it and to take the responsibility of growing yourself and helping the community grow.
And if I may, to give you a message right now, and it is also from a personal standpoint and also from as a Latino, I really respect your journey. I really respect what you're doing, but I also want to thank you because having a person so passionate about our region and working in the region and making sure that we are tackling different problems like growth, tech, gender equality, embrace of our culture, arts is really beautiful. And as a
Thank
Latin
you.
American, as a dear Latin American, as your pair in that sense, I really want to thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, that's all for this episode. Thank you so much for joining me, Silvia. It was amazing to have this conversation with you. As always, talking with you is amazing. And yeah, if anyone wants to find you in social media or in LinkedIn, just go Silvia Ariza, right?
Exactly.
Good.
I can provide you the link.
Perfect. So I will put the links on the description to contact Silvia. Thank you so much and have an amazing end of your day.
Thank you. So happy for the invitation.
Bye.
See you.